What is the one thing about the Immersed project that you're most proud of, beyond the award itself?
With the Immersed project, the thing that I am most proud of has been the opportunity to bring together such inspiring musicians from my community to create a cohesive body of work. There were a number of inspirations with this project. Right from the onset, the idea of, bringing this immersive vision to life and pushing the technology, pushing the production, challenging myself as a composer. But all of that isn't possible without the musicians themselves coming together and being able to share in a collective vision to make something beautiful.
You've mentioned that Immersed was composed from the ground up for immersive audio. How does your writing process change when you know a sound will live in a 360-degree space rather than a stereo field?
At the very inception of the Immersed project are the compositions. And with this project, every composition and every part of every composition was written with very specific spatial intent. And by that I mean, I knew exactly where I wanted each part to sit in the three-dimensional space. Now, what's really important to define as a composer when we're working on spatial music is what is the perspective for the listener. And so with this project, I want the listener to be literally surrounded by the ensemble and to be blending both, realism in the sense that, the string section or the brass section or the drum set is recorded in such a way that sounds hyper-realistic, but also with a sense of surrealism, in that there can be mixtures of acoustic and electronic instruments in a way that kind of couldn't happen in nature. And so from understanding that perspective, I was able to be very, very clear about where I wanted each instrument to sit for the listener. Now, as an engineer, I've been working in the immersive arts for a very long time, and as a result, I've really internalized a lot of personal aesthetics and preferences around what I like where. And a lot of this actually leans into our psychoacoustics, which is how we hear, the mechanism of hearing that we all possess. And so, for instance, when we have something, a sound source behind us, it tends to be a little darker in timbre and be focused on very differently than something in front of us or beside us or above us. And so I have been leaning into and learning how that affects sound for a very long time. And so that played a role in my compositional process. But also, as soon as space became a part of the composition, I found that the location of things could be a part of building the narrative. To have conversations between instruments in different places, or to be able to use that space as something that could be taken away or augmented as a way to build the form and build the tension and release of the composition. So really, space just becomes another factor in the compositional process, along with melody, harmony, groove, form, timbre. And when it's allowed to interface with each of those things, it can truly bring, for me at least, a new dimension to every aspect of the compositional process.
You've said what matters most is the music, but how do you manage to keep 38 musicians focused on the soul of the music when they are surrounded by such a complex technical setup?
With the Immersed project, there was a significant amount of technology at play throughout the production. And even during the inception of the project, the idea of creating something for immersive audio does mean that there's this technical relationship with the art that is constantly present. At the same time, though, my priority as a producer was always to ensure that technology was serving the music. And this is because at the end of the day, what matters most is the music itself. The things that we are moved by as listeners, myself included, are meaningful performances. And of course, that comes through composition, but in a recording, it comes through the performances themselves, and that means the artists. And as an artist myself, as a performer, I know that although technology can certainly augment the quality of the presentation, what matters is that I feel comfortable to be myself and to play my best in the studio. And so that is something that I prioritized as a producer and an engineer at all times throughout every single part of this process. What this often meant was I would spend significant amount of time late into the night working with the technical team, myself as an engineer, with my co-engineers, with my co-director for the film, getting all of the technology completely dialed in, which meant, very complex immersive audio microphone setups, multiple camera setups, etc., so that the following morning when the artist would walk in the room, that although they would see all this technology, we could very, very quickly begin discussing the music and begin recording the music. And my goal was that the technology would fade away for them as quickly as possible. And the way that happens is through pre-production and is through planning and is through as much mastery of the technology as possible. So what was, ended up happening was exactly that. We were able to make it so, within an hour of entering the studio, myself and the artist are just focused on the performance, focused on getting an inspired performance by them and making sure that they feel comfortable, making sure that they hear themselves well, and not letting the technology get in the way. However, then part 2 comes, is once everybody's settled, I did find that the artists coming into the control room, being able to listen to what we were creating in immersive audio, then suddenly, rather than being a daunting aspect of the production, the technology became an inspiration because they were able to feel that envelopment at the source and it directly inspired what they went out to do. So I think the goal was to have the technology not feel like this kind of overarching presence, but rather be something that was invisible until it was inspiring. And that was a priority at every single stage. And then, throughout editing, mixing, mastering, it comes down to having a team. It comes down to having people whose perspective you trust. And my co-producer, Drew Jureka, and Morten Lindberg, and mastering engineer Michael Romanowski were always there making sure that we were advocating for the music.
How did it feel to see 38 different musicians from your community come together for such a complex technical vision?
It is an absolute dream come true to have been able to collaborate with the 38 artists on this project. Toronto's my home. This community of musicians and artists are my family. These are folks that I've grown up with, I've studied with, I've played with, I've toured with, I've mixed for and mastered for and produced for. We trust each other. We understand each other's lives and musicianship and kind of everything that encompasses our artistry. And to be able to bring everybody together and create a project where they could just shine is my greatest honor. These are folks that I care for deeply and that I'm deeply inspired by. And every single day in the studio was just a dream come true, watching folks who I consider friends and colleagues, but also heroes, just do what they do and bring this music to life. I'm also deeply, deeply proud of our community for the immense creativity and the dedication to making new music. And I think Immersed is one example of many from our community of a project that is bringing so many different layers of artistry and culture together to create something cohesive and new. And for it to be recognized internationally in the way that it has is an exceptional honor.
Which track on the album is the most emotionally significant to you and why?
It is very difficult to choose one track that is the most emotionally significant for me from Immersed. But if I have to choose one, it will be the third song, Repose. This song reflects compositionally something that I have been experimenting with and trying for a very long time. I have studied musics from around the world for my entire career. This includes jazz music, chamber music, electronic music, R&B music, folk music, rock music. But Indian classical music, both Hindustani and Carnatic, is a form of art that I am deeply, deeply connected to. Not only is it music that I studied by living in India and studying with a great vocal master there, but also here in Toronto was introduced to through Trishi Sankran, a great South Indian percussionist who is one of the leaders in world music education around the globe. And this piece brings together so many of these influences. I think also, my mom is Indian, and this music and this culture is in my blood. It's part of who I am, and I think that Repose reflects this kind of multifaceted aspect of my own life. The piece begins as well with what we call an alap, or an opening in Indian music, with me playing an instrument called the bass veena. This is an instrument that I invented. It's one of a kind. It's built by my dear friend Les Godfrey. And to get to express in this way and record the instrument, to me, the most authentically I've ever been able to, is just an absolute dream. And to collaborate with all of the folks on this piece, specifically, John and Andrew Kay, who are playing the esraj and the Himalayan bowls, but also the saxophones, two folks that I've traveled the world with, including living in India, studying with them. And then to get to collaborate with Subha Shankaran and Ed Hanley, Subha, who brought the Solkatu and the vocal South Indian language to the piece, and Ed, who played tabla on the piece, as well as all of the other artists, of course. Just there's something about this particular piece of music that I just think encompasses creatively. It almost feels biographical to a certain degree. And I'm just so thrilled with how it came out, but mostly I'm so thrilled with how the artists were able to bring it to life.
With over 1,000 elements in tracks like Tapestry, how do you keep the mix from feeling crowded?
So on a song like Tapestry, there are over 1,000 individual tracks. Now, this doesn't always mean 1,000 individual musical parts. The track count gets quite large because of the immersive microphone techniques. So even one layer of drums can be close to 40 microphones. In this piece as well, there's all of the various kind of Foley and metallic instruments, and every single layer of that was created with immersive intent, which again leads to track count going up very quickly. So there are a lot of layers. And the key to having a mix not feel crowded, regardless of whether it's 10 layers or hundreds, is all about volume, and also, in this case, is about space. First of all, volume. At the end of the day, the thing that allows us to focus on something over something else is its amplitude, and therefore how loud it is in relation. Volume also affects our perception of timbre. When something is louder, we hear it with a certain brightness, and when something is quieter, we naturally kind of hear it roll off in the high frequencies. When we can balance things properly, which takes hours and hours and hours of work, we can present things where you can focus on something and the other elements are supporting and not distracting you from that. Now, the addition of space, I think, helps a significant amount as well. Our psychoacoustic listening mechanism allows us to focus on things in front of us very differently than behind. And so suddenly layers that are behind us naturally are going to have less attention or grab our attention, less so than something in front. Where something behind us can really grab our attention, where something above can be more peripheral unless you are more aggressive with it. And so all of these kind of scientific factors of how we hear the world around us also come deeply into play with this record, specifically on Tapestry, but all the songs, in terms of balancing spatial location, balancing timbre, and focusing always, always, always on getting just the right level so that as a mixer and as a producer, I can guide the listener to focus on what they want to while having all of the other textures support that element, sometimes supporting it to build tension, and sometimes also giving it enough space to be given a sense of calmness, even when there are hundreds of layers.
What is the biggest myth about immersive audio that you would like to debunk?
The biggest myth about immersive audio that I would personally like to debunk is this notion that in the onset of Dolby Atmos and current object-based immersive technologies, that there are no rules and that it is, quote, the Wild West when it comes to what we do. This is just not true. First of all, our current immersive audio formats like Dolby Atmos and Auro 3D, Sony 360, Ambisonics, and the like, these are all coming from a long lineage of technology that begins even all the way back to, playback technology in terms of live speaker immersive playback, and then eventually, of course, into our more modern mixing. But if we can understand that lineage, let's say we go to our quadraphonic recordings, then our 5/1 recordings, we understand what happened when 7/1 was introduced. We understand the effects of cinema. We understand the effects of installation art. We understand the benefits of ambisonics when it comes to installations versus object-based technology, etc. And we can study not only the technology, but the artistic intent along the way, which can be defined as our aesthetics. We can see what worked, what experiments were taken, what risks were taken over time, and understand what kind of, where we land today with this massive body of work to be able to move forward from. And so just because somebody hasn't spent time with the great classical recordings or the great early 5/1 mixes and quad mixes doesn't mean that there are no rules. It just means that you're not aware of them. Also, when it comes to recording techniques, when it comes to our understanding of our relationship psychoacoustically to space, this has been very, very, very well documented and researched for decades at this stage. And so all of that can help us to build a proper foundation to then be able to make creative decisions from. And so rather than feeling like we need to invent every single part of this, we can study the past and then build upon it, which is how all great art develops through time.
Winning a Grammy for a project you've described as a lifetime's worth of work is a monumental achievement. Personally and professionally, does this recognition feel like the closing of a chapter or a new beginning? And how is it already opening doors for your upcoming projects?
Winning a Grammy Award for the Immersed album is humbling and profoundly inspiring for me as a professional and on a personal level. First, to get to do this with my colleagues and my friends and my inspirations, Drew Jurecka, Morten Lindberg, and Michael Romanowski, is something I will always treasure. I'm so grateful to have been able to have a team of people who are so immensely talented, who are willing to dedicate their time to this project and believe in the music at its core. It means the world to me. On a personal level, when we create music, let's say for a record, in this case, this is a concept that I've been imagining for quite some time. And we don't create music and imagine music for the purposes of awards and accolades. It's a very, very personal thing where you imagine something and then you do what you can to bring that imagination to life. And of course, that happens through community. It happens through musicianship, through artistry, through technical mastery of your team. And at the end of the day, it's a very abstract concept, the idea of sharing one's art. This record represents a creative thought that I've been having for a long time. And, we don't create music and ideas and art for the purposes of awards and accolades. That's not the intent at all. It's very personal and it's very abstract, really, to externalize a creative thought. And of course, the creative thought is one thing, but really it takes an entire community of people, artists and engineers and producers and filmmakers to bring this particular project to life. And again, to have those folks dedicate their time and believe in the music and bring their artistry to it is something that is so deeply meaningful. And so then to have that process, which has then been externalized, recognized by my peers in the Recording Academy, is such a humbling experience. The Recording Academy is filled with musicians and music professionals, artists, and people who really deeply care about music as a whole. And to have them recognize this creative vision for an immersive album, and to recognize this music, and to recognize the artistry within it, and give it that kind of stamp of approval at the highest level of music is something that is I think it's too challenging to express in words. Again, I was going to make this music regardless and be equally proud of everybody involved, regardless of an award. But I do think that what it does on an internal level is it gives this acknowledgement from my peers that says, keep going. And, it just kind of makes me feel like I belong. It gives a sense of arriving somewhere. And I'm looking forward to taking that inspiration and continuing to allow this to hopefully have that grow and to, continue to forge paths through creativity within the immersive arts. Professionally, as an artist, an engineer, and as a producer, to win a Grammy Award is an exceptional honor. This is a category, Best Surround Sound Album, Best Immersive Audio Album, where my absolute heroes have been awarded for their work and their dedication to their craft. And to have myself and Michael and Morton and Drew acknowledged among them with this award, but also the acknowledgement of the art and the project as a whole and everybody involved is something that I will treasure. And again, I think it lights a little fire for me professionally to just continue to just push deeper into finding every way possible to support and make meaningful art, and to believe in myself, and to believe in community and collaboration, and know that anything is possible. I do think that receiving the Grammy Award for this project has given me a perspective on the potential for immersive composition and immersive production. This project was certainly going out on a limb in terms of believing in a certain way of going about making music and how it can interface with immersive technology. And I think what this does is it acknowledges that the listenership and the community is interested in seeing how this can continue to evolve. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that. And there are already some very exciting conversations that have started with labels and artists, producers and engineers about ways that this kind of process might inspire new art from their perspective. And I'm looking forward to seeing that art come to the world and inspired to see where I can be a part of that journey.